I'm Dr. Dave Jando. Welcome back to the Insider Insight Show. I am honored to have back with me someone who is kind of the leader of the pack when it comes to truth, facts, data, and the freedom movement. Bill Holter, for decades, has caught a lot of grief. Why? Because he tells you what you need to know, and it's not what the globalist cult syndicate wants you to know about. Because when Bill speaks about events and situations in the financial world and beyond the financial world into the geopolitical world, because they're all related, he's putting you ahead of this globalist constructed curve that ends in a brick wall with the shattering of your freedoms and liberties. And with the information Bill provides, he provides you an off-ramp. A ramp to your financial freedom, your economic freedom, your health freedom, your freedom, which is why Bill has been targeted over the years. Now, for those of you not familiar with Bill, after a lengthy career in financial services, Bill retired in 2006. Well, why? Because he saw something coming down the tracks that he felt he needed to protect his family from, and for those that were willing to listen to him. And he moved his family, frankly, out of the United States. Then, after the storm clouds passed, Bill did return in 2011 and makes his home in the great state of Texas. He joined Miles Franklin, M-I-L-E-S, Franklin, F-R-A-N-K-L-I-N, milesfranklin.com, as an associate writer in 2012, and continues his association with Miles Franklin as a broker and a dealer for Miles Franklin. I encourage you to go to Miles Franklin's site. I also encourage you to go to Bill's new website, Bill Holter, H-O-L-T-E-R, BillHolter.com. The bottom line, folks, is Bill is one of the best forensic, economic, and geopolitical analysts in the world. It is my honor to welcome back our friend, Bill Holter. Bill, welcome back to the Operation Freedom Show platform and the Insider Insight Show. Welcome back, Bill.
Thanks for having me again, Dave.
So, Bill, I want to start.
I lost signal there for a minute.
Oh, no problem. Bill, I want to start with a quote and get your take on it from Christopher Hedges. Quote, "We now live in a nation where doctors destroy health, lawyers destroy justice, universities destroy knowledge, governments destroy freedom, the press destroys information, religion destroys morals, and banks destroy our economy." End quote. Your take.
I wish I had said that. That's all I could say is I wish I had said that because it's perfect. It's 100% spot on.
Well, it's actually, Bill, I don't know, maybe he's been listening to you because it's what you've been telling us for a long time. And in the process,
right,
people were calling yourself, myself, a number of other people in the independent media conspiracy theorists for stating the truth of what was really happening. But in fact, Bill, you and I have discussed this before. It's not conspiracy theorists. It might be conspiracy, but conspiracy reality.
Right. And one of the things that we've done over the years is try to connect different dots. Mm-hmm. And once you connect dots, then you can put forth what the plan is. And I mean, I think if what you're looking at today, it's all planned. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no way that 120 different chicken farms burn up. There's no way that we have all these train derailments all at the same time. And they changed the definition of the toxicity of the vinyl chloride, mm-hmm. 3 weeks before the train wreck. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are not coincidences. It is a plan. And it is a plan basically to kill you, kill me, kill the population. And if you don't believe me, just listen to Klaus Schwab, listen to Bill Gates, listen to the elites. They're on record publicly that the population needs to be culled.
Bill, you and I have also discussed this before. When the globalist cult syndicate, before they see all of us as being in the shower, and before they flush the toilet with us in the shower, they give us warnings. And essentially, it's
Yes,
a survival of the fittest. You know what? If they were smart enough to figure this out and get what we were saying, well, okay, we'll let them pass for a while. But those that weren't, well, hey, you know what? It's the way it is, right?
they consider it bad etiquette to harm or kill someone without first giving them fair warning.
So that brings me to this statement from the other day from the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, globalist cult organization extraordinaire. The IMF says the world needs to prepare for the unthinkable after COVID and the war in Ukraine. This is from Epoch Times. International Monetary Fund Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva has warned that the world needs to be prepared to better handle shocks and, quote, the unthinkable, end quote, in a post-COVID-19 world and in light of the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. Okay, Bill. So when she's given us a warning, she's about to flush the toilet. They're about to flush the toilet while we're in the shower. So, Bill, we've gone through COVID. We're going this whole war. We got toxic waste and an environmental disaster combined with what happened in Ohio, along with what happened with the bombing of the Nord Stream pipeline and the release of millions of barrel equivalents of methane gas. Bill, what is the unthinkable? Is it a nuclear event? What are we talking about here? What do you think she's telling us is coming?
Something. I mean, I obviously have no idea, but it will be something completely unexpected. Although go back 5, 10, go back 15, 20 years. Pretty much everything that's happening right now is, or at that point in time, was unthinkable. So, I mean, who knows? It's, put your devious helmet on and sit down for an hour and think, and, maybe you can come up with it. But, I mean, there's so many different angles that the population is being attacked. Is it a new angle? Is it more force on an existing angle? I don't know. But I do know you should listen to them. And by the way, I did write an article, I think it was back in late 2019 or maybe early 2020. The IMF had given, I think, something like 17 or 18 very serious financial warnings. They weren't social warnings, but they were financial warnings leading up to where we got to with COVID. Mm-hmm. So as I mentioned earlier, I think it's very important to not just blow off what you're being told. Listen to what you're being told, because they are telling you the truth. As I mentioned, they feel that it's bad etiquette if they don't warn you. And it's your fault if you don't listen.
And Bill, you've spoken about this before. The only thing preventing the mass public from hitting the streets, if you will, is the fact that there is this smoke and mirror show as it relates to financial markets, that the financial markets are fine, when in fact they're not fine, are they, Bill?
No, well, the markets have been rigged for years and years. It's been done with derivatives, and derivatives are leveraged contracts, if you will, where you can put $1 down and you can control $100. Mm-hmm. So they've been able to suppress gold and silver prices, some other commodity prices, and of course they've levitated the treasury markets with lower interest rates, and levitated the stock markets. I mean, stocks now, even after the 15%, 20% correction, stocks are still far higher on a valuation basis than they were at the peak in 2008 and the peak at the dot-com bubble in 2000. But people view it as normal. And what we were talking about before we started recording is that really the only glue that is holding society together is the fact that the stock market, the financial markets have not collapsed. And once that happens, then you're going to see massive bank problems, which wipes out the ability for people to use what they perceive as their money currently. So really, society, I mean, you're obviously seeing a lot of whacked out things in society, but you're not seeing mass revolts at this point. And the reason being, the average person gets his statement each month and they've not been destroyed yet. But once there's serious problems in the financial markets, then you're going to see massive problems socially.
And one of the ways in which they continue this smoke and mirror show, this con, Bill, is by manipulating data, which drives their algos, which drives the paper vapor markets, if you will. So, Bill, one of the indications we have, at least in the precious metals world, is this commitment of traders report that comes out every Friday, issued by the CFTC, the Commodities Futures Trading Commission. And Bill, about 3 weeks ago now, they issued a note that, well, we're not going to come out with our report this week because, well, there was a ransomware attack. It'll take a couple days to get this turned around. And it really kind of, gives people a little bit of a idea what's happening behind the curtain with these paper derivative vapor trades that are occurring. Bill, it's now almost 3 weeks, and there's no indication that they have any data forthcoming, which, Bill, obfuscates what's really happening even further. Am I off on that?
Right. No, you're absolutely right. First off, you don't even know for real that the COT numbers are actual and for real.
Right.
But at this point, now they're not even publishing the COT numbers, so there's no way to look forensically behind the curtain to see what's going on. And interestingly enough, I think it was either Monday or Tuesday, a CFTC member resigned and basically saying that they were not going to partake in the clown show that the CFTC is.
So, Bill, in addition, the numbers they do publish, at least are not now saying are under ransomware attack, but they publish, are bogus. You know, one of the big numbers that drives these algos, these computer algo-driven trades that dump precious metals and buy paper vapor stock certificates, is the employment number. So we had this, we're expecting 185,000 new jobs. Oh, wait, the figure came in at 517,000 new jobs. And the Fed's going to be raising rent. Oh, the economy's great. But wait, what they don't tell us is that when you dig underneath the hood a little bit, they added 3 million seasonally adjusted jobs. So really in January, we did not gain 517,000 jobs. We lost 2.5 million jobs.
That's absolutely correct. And the 3 million jobs is an adjustment by BLS. And they do that in January. But basically, it's made up stuff. It's not... The numbers are completely made up. Where do they get 3 million jobs, especially with the month before? How many major corporations, major tech companies were laying off tens of thousands of people per company?
Well, and then, Bill, how about the end of 2022? Right around the Christmas holidays, the Philadelphia Fed issued a report. Right, it said, well, it's been reported this year that 1,121,500 jobs were added to the economy. Well, in actuality, in going through it, it's been overstated by 1.1 million jobs. In other words, for the entire year, right?
And now you're 4 million between the last jobs report and in December. That's 4 million jobs that are made up.
But everything's fine.
Right.
And that's what keeps this con alive.
Correct.
But Bill, a con cannot continue for perpetuity. And Bill, I believe we're at that point where the con is ending. And the reason why I believe that, and please tell me, you're the expert on this, is the reason why we're seeing train derailments, and look up at the sky, it's a balloon, a bird, a plane. Oh no, it's a balloon. The reason why we're seeing all these issues raising their heads, this poly crisis, is because they've lost control, and they know that the system, financial system, is about to hit bottom.
Well, what's happened is, first off, you're mentioning the balloons, and I view the balloons as a smokescreen. People are worried, oh my gosh, aliens, could be an EMP, whatever. What I think is they have so many balls up in the air, and each ball contains a huge lie. Probably, well, I don't know if it's the biggest lie, but a pretty big lie is that the vaccines were safe and effective, and it turns out, no, the vaccines were a death shot. And a lot of people, just average people, know others personally that have died or stroked or had, serious injuries. There's been too many lies, and that's the problem with a lie, is once you tell one, you got to tell another and another and another, and they got to get bigger and bigger. So my point being is that the lies have gotten so big, and there's so many balls up in the air at this point, that they had to come up with something for cover. And I think you're absolutely right. They're going to either pull the plug or kick the table over, or whatever you want to call it. It's here and it's now, because the lies are just too big.
So then we got to take it to the next step, Bill. And we've talked about this before, but it bears repeating an emphasis at this point. There are many people I've spoken to that say, oh, this is beyond me. There's nothing I can do to protect myself. Now, Bill, I firmly believe there are things people can do to at least insulate themselves to some degree on a number of different planes. So, Bill, educate our listeners on what they need to do from a number of different standpoints to insulate themselves from this globalist cult that, as you mentioned early in this conversation, they are intent on stripping people of their freedom, their liberty, their future, their life, and our republic.
Right.
So
yeah, I mean, I've gone over a lot of things that you can do, and understand that you can only do so much. I mean, if this is a complete collapse and this lasts, God forbid, the system's not coming back up within a year, 2 years, 3 years, the culling of the population is going to be unbelievable. I mean, unless you have the skills or the skill set that existed over 100 years ago, you're not going to make it, because you're going to run out of supplies. Unless you know how to farm, unless you know how to ranch, unless you know how to hunt and butcher animals and provide for yourself that way, you're not going to make it, because you will run out of supplies. But do the best that you can. Try to get your assets out of the system so that when the system goes down, you don't lose your wealth. Try to become as self-sufficient as you possibly can. Have a water source. Have a power source, an electricity source. Put some food back. Just try to become as self-sufficient as you possibly can. And another thing I've talked about in the past, I think if you live in a city, you're dead. You don't stand a chance, no matter how many supplies you have. In a city with a big population, you have no idea who friend or foe is. They're going to be mostly foes, but you have no idea who's friend, who's foe. You don't have any idea what direction it's coming from. It's my belief you must live rural if you're going to go through this. And from a financial... I was just going to mention one other thing. Of course, living rural, you do need to know people around you that have different skill sets than you. You can help them, they can help you. And that's the biggest difference today than back in the 1930s. Back in the 1930s, society was different. We were a God-fearing society. Neighbors helped neighbors. Today, where are we? They're trying to strip God from existence, which is not possible, but they're trying to strip God from existence in people's minds. And as far as from a social standpoint, to find people that are willing to help you out of the goodness of their heart is few and far between, and you're more likely going to come across someone who their intent would be to steal everything you have and leave you dead. And that's unfortunate, but that is today's world, especially in the metropolitan areas.
And Bill, from right now we're watching Argentina in huge trouble. We saw Venezuela recently in huge trouble. And for example, I recently saw that Argentina this past year had 99% inflation, right? Yeah. And just as those folks in Venezuela that in the midst of rampant, enormous, much higher than 99% inflation, there were survivors and financially and that were able to buy food and clothes and the like, fuel, were those that had gold and silver. And that is what they used. And we're seeing this now.
They also had Bitcoin and they also had dollars because those are still functioning. But when the U.S. goes down, dollars will not function. Will they take the internet down? I think that's likely. So do you really believe a farmer is going to accept a Bitcoin or a partial Bitcoin from you for cattle or chickens or whatever? I mean, I liken that to Will Wimpy telling Popeye, I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today. The farmer's not going to accept a Bitcoin next Tuesday for chicken eggs today. It's just not going to happen.
Well, and then in the past week and a half, White House targets cryptocurrencies, calls for stronger enforcement by regulators. This from Epic Times. This from Nick Carter. Operation Choke Point 2.0 is underway, and crypto is in the crosshairs.
Well, and the reason for that is the Western governments, the Western central banks, they plan on bringing forth central bank digital currencies. Mm-hmm. So they don't want any competition from the cryptocurrencies. And then obviously, if you have a logical thought process, the central bank digital currency, all you have to do is look at what happened in Canada with the truckers a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. If you gave $10 to the truckers, you had your bank account shut off, whether it had $500 in it or $5 million in it. Your account was shut off. And that's what will happen with central bank digital currencies. They will have the ability to shut you off, and they certainly will start with the ability to keep you located where they want you to be located, because your digital currencies won't work outside of a certain radius. So it's entirely about control, and everything that they're doing is entirely about stripping you of your rights and stripping you of your freedoms. And those are God-given. And obviously that's why they want to strip God from the thoughts, from the thoughts and minds of the population. Oh, and a couple other things, actually. You mentioned Argentina, Venezuela. So Venezuela now has a new president, and they were told, because the last president was unofficial or whatever, they couldn't have their gold. So now that guy's gone, they still can't have their gold. And yesterday, Nigeria lost their entire currency. They canceled it. So whatever value you had in Nigerian bonds or banks or whatever, it's all gone overnight. Zero.
Bill, the way I look at this, and tell me if this is wrong, I look at this as society being in a building, and the globalist cult arsonists have set a fire in the building, and they're closing the doors, and they're actually turning off the lights where it says exit, such as when they hide the COT data, where they manipulate employment data and income data and the like. And they're trying to trap as many people in that burning structure. And And Bill, when I look at this from a financial standpoint, as you said, when the system goes down, dollars are going to be like they were with Deutschmarks in the Weimar Republic. Get a wheelbarrow and see what that gets you, right? So we see other countries. Right, yeah, right. So we see Russia and China and India and the BRICS countries, right? We see Saudi Arabia. We see all coming together and saying, we need a different system and a different reserve currency. And they're talking about backing it with hard assets, gold, silver, oil, natural gas. So, Bill, when I look at ways out of this burning building financially, and we're talking about these reports about them targeting cryptos, and as you said, the internet going down. Hey, Bill, a lot of these trunk lines for the internet go along railway right-of-ways. So when they take these trains out, they're the unforeseen complication, if you will, but foreseen by the people perpetrating this, is they cut the trunk lines too. So, Bill, when it comes right down to it, and tell me if I'm looking at this too simplistically, the best exit is gold and silver.
Well, your best exit is to follow what the non-Western countries are doing. And yes, I mean, obviously, just look at the BRICS. Look at Russia, China. Look at what they're doing. They have been buying gold steadily, and they do that because they understand the dollar's going down. You follow what they're doing. I guess it was month and a half, 2 months ago, Saudi Arabia announced that they would be accepting currencies other than dollars. So effectively, Bretton Woods 2 is now dead, and that is a torpedo right into the hull of the United States. If you look at the news, and if you even look at, read the Wall Street Journal, read Barron's, look at CNBC, they're not telling you anything about the fact that the petrodollar died. It's not dying, it died. That was a headshot. So, I mean, you're asking me what to do. The whole idea is to get your capital out of the system, and all roads lead to gold and silver, because gold and silver are the only two monies on the planet that cannot default. They cannot bankrupt. And that's what the problem is today. The world is, and I've been harping on this for 10 years or so. There's too much debt in the system. The debt can never be paid back in current terms. And okay, so they've only got two choices. They can either default by outright default, non-payment, or they can default by destroying the currencies and making them worthless and say, well, we paid you your dollars, your yen, whatever, but they're worthless. The world is in the process of defaulting one way or the other, whether it be through bankruptcy or through hyperinflation. Either way, it doesn't matter, because gold and silver cannot default, and they cannot be debased as fiat currencies can and are debased.
And the big boys, if you will, let's look at the central banks. I think this past year was the second largest purchasing of gold they have ever done, correct?
Correct. Yep. And you ask yourself why.
Yeah.
And the obvious answer is they know they're going to take a hit on their paper positions, the dollar positions. They need something as a hedge, as an offset that will grow large enough, fast enough to fill up those black holes of default.
And we also see a supply shortage of silver, correct?
Yeah, this past year was a very big deficit. It was over 100. What was it? I forget how many tons now. That's not on the top of my head, but there was a very, very big deficit. And I think it worked out to be about 10% of demand was 10% higher than what supply was.
Yeah,
And that's huge.
and Bill, and the only thing that keeps those prices, those paper prices, again, there's a differential between
Right.
paper and physical, are the criminal manipulation of the paper markets that you spoke of earlier.
Right. And you started this whole thing off by saying, you and I and others have been whacked over the head for years
Yeah.
as conspiracy nuts, blah, blah, blah. Well, I mean, it starts with gold and silver. The fact that they use derivatives, they use COMEX, they use LBMA, they sell paper contracts that are unbacked. They're not selling gold, they're selling paper contracts. And the COMEX price, the LBMA price, is the tail that has been wagging the dog for years and years. And I've said this all along, and I totally stand by this. When all is said and done, failure to deliver will blow up the entire global financial system. Once gold and once silver is demanded versus contracts, and they can't be bribed anymore with a 20% premium, over the contract price or whatever. Once the bribes are no longer accepted and demand for delivery is made, and that delivery cannot be fulfilled, it's game over for the entire financial system.
And Bill, on September 26, 2022, the Nord Stream pipelines were blown. And you and myself and a number of other people raised a question of the West potentially being involved, because you always ask who benefits. Well, now Cy
Exactly.
Hirsch, investigative journalist who has a really outstanding track record of bringing information forward that people don't want to know and don't want to hear, but the truth, has outlined that the Biden administration was involved with Norway and a number of other NATO countries in this operation. Many people say, oh, well, Putin's going to do something to the United States, going to blow off an event, pipelines, whatever. Bill, I believe the biggest thing Vladimir Putin could do in retaliation, if you want to call it, is issue actually a press release and say, world, we're backing the ruble, and I talked to my buddy Xi, and we're backing the yuan with gold and silver. There you go. Bill, I believe that is a more devastating response than he could have with any kind of other of physical munition.
Well, and it's if you want to call it a Sun Tzu response, basically what they would be doing is that would unmask the real price of gold. You'd see gold skyrocket. It would completely destroy the Western financial system. And whether people realize this or not, if you don't have money or the ability to print your own money or borrow money, if you don't have capital, you can't fight a war.
Mm-hmm.
So that would leave two alternatives. Either the U.S. Basically stops hegemony across the globe, or starts pressing red buttons.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, with the wackos in Washington, that would probably be the reaction. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That is, if they were to come out and say we are going to back our currencies with gold, that is the ultimate financial nuclear bomb.
Now, many people say, well, that would hurt the United States, but not completely paralyze it, because the United States has 8,300 tons of gold. Bill, do you honestly believe, I mean, remember when Trump sent his Treasury Secretary Mnuchin to Fort Knox after he was in office for about a month or so? And Mnuchin, before he walks into the building at Fort Knox, goes, Mnuchin, who had been involved in the movie industry, wow, this would really make an interesting movie if I went in there and there was no gold. And then he said it before. And then he walks out after he's there, not very long. No assays done. No. He walks out and he says, "What? Yeah, gold is good. Yeah, you're right. Gold is good. But what? Right? Bill, do
He
you
told you
honestly believe we got 8,300 tons of gold in this country?
Well, no, I don't, and I've talked about this for 15 years now. The United States has, or the West Point, Fort Knox, Denver, the vaults have not been audited since I think it was 1956. I know it's in the 1950s.
Yeah, I think it's 56.
So why would you not have an audit each year?
Right.
And I think they've given the same reason that they stopped publishing M3 money supply, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago. It costs too much. Well, really, you can spend $1 billion on a bridge to nowhere, but you can't afford to do an audit. It makes zero sense at all. And the only reason you would not have an audit is because you can't prove that you have what you say you have.
Well, and then some people are saying,
So
you can handle this budget deficit and all we're in debt by 31 trillion just by revaluing the gold that the United States has, because it's valued at $41 an ounce on the books. Just revalue it. Well, here's the problem, Bill. And so you would think, hey, that's a pretty easy solution. But here's the problem, Bill. You got to have the gold, because you can't say it's worth $2,000 an ounce or $5,000 an ounce rather than $41 an ounce if you can't prove that you have the physical asset.
Right. Well, and here's the thing, and I haven't done the math in, I don't know, 3 years. I think the last time I did the math was 2019. In order to, so assuming we have the 8,300 tons, if you revalued gold higher to a point where it would pay off the national debt, back then, 3 years ago, you'd have to have $125,000 an ounce. The number now is well north of $150,000 per ounce. And what would that do? What type of inflation would we have? And understand what that means is the dollar completely collapsed against real money, and it would completely collapse against real stuff, up to and including, a lowly cup of coffee. A cup of coffee would probably be $200. So the amount of inflation that would create, it would be destruction anyway. So yeah, don't worry. We could pay the debt off with the gold we supposedly have, which I highly doubt. Okay, that's fine. But you've just destroyed 98% of the population because they can no longer live. They can no longer afford to live.
Bill, as I mentioned early in this conversation, you are you are a broker with Miles Franklin, gold and silver.
Right.
So, Bill, give us your assessment of where we are supply-wise, where we are demand-wise as it relates to gold and silver that you're seeing on the ground. This is a very important perspective people don't get.
Yeah, the supply has been tight. I mean, it's been tight over the last full year. I can tell you that the demand did slow after Thanksgiving. It's starting to pick up again now, and that's normal. From Thanksgiving to first part of January, it normally slows. But what I'm seeing less small orders. I'm seeing less, I don't know, maybe a drop of 25, 30% as far as the small orders. But I have seen, and going all the way through November, December, January, I'm seeing $1 million orders, multi-million dollar orders. The orders are getting bigger. So my thought process is you're getting people that have accumulated big sums of money that are all of a sudden getting scared. I mean, I had a guy a couple days ago contact me and say, I got $2 million in the bank and I want it out today. I want to do the trade today. Get me the invoice. Tell me how to wire it. I want the money out of my account today. So, I mean, that is, I think, the new mindset is that bigger money is starting to wise up and starting to flee.
So you got big money coming in, and the silver market is infinitesimal compared to the stock market, the bond market, even the gold market, correct?
Oh yeah, silver's silver is a nothing market. If you take global production, I think it's what, 15 at current spot prices, I think it's $15 billion a year total. Mm-hmm. And I mean, Washington sneezes $15 billion.
Right. Right. That's
I could have said something different. Sneeze worked.
Right. So, Bill, let's close on, what is you've dealt with the public on the front line as it relates to precious metals for years. What's the biggest mistake people make when it comes to gold and silver?
Actually, there's two of them. They try to time it price-wise. And at some point in time, the music's going to stop, and if you're not in, you're out. And I think the biggest mistake, and this is not just in gold and silver, this is just a mindset. And you can't blame people for this because the world was U.S.-centric for so many years. The biggest mistake people make is they think in terms of dollars. When in fact, and I've said this for many years, once the music stops and when this is over, people are going to think in terms of ounces as opposed to fiat currency units.
Many people ask the question, Bill, okay, so I have now wrestled away from my stockbroker some money. Didn't want to hand it over to me to buy physical precious metals because he said they were barbarous relics. But I got my hands on some of my own money, and so how much do I put in gold and how much do I put in silver, or do I put it all in one, or what do I do? What do you say to those folks?
If storage is not a problem, you want to be way heavier in silver because of the gold to silver ratio. Silver is undervalued to gold. As far as, and I get this question all the time, how much of my capital should I put into gold and silver? And for at least the last 5 years, my standard answer has been whatever you don't want to lose. And that's just, again, gold and silver cannot bankrupt. They cannot default. You can't wake up tomorrow morning and find out you lost everything.
Well, and here's a good example. I talked about this. It's actually on our homepage at davejanda.com. It's for the public. It's called The Road to Freedom. It's my family's battle against the globalist syndicate for 4 generations. My great-grandfather was well known in the beer industry. He actually created the formula for Pilsner beer in the Czech Republic and then emigrated to the United States and had actually built up a beer company, a brewery. And the government came in on the savings and loan crisis in 1907 and 1908 and shut him down. And the only thing he had left were his gold and silver coins, which is what got the family through and got the family through the Depression. And I take you back to a conversation I had with my dad about 25 years ago, and he was visiting from Chicago, where we are in Michigan, and I got my 401k statement. And I opened it up and I looked at it, and I guess I smiled, and he goes, "Oh, so you like what you see, right?" And I go, "Well, yeah, I'm good with that." And he goes, "Do you know what that number is to me, Dave?" "What?" "Zero."
Right.
Okay? He goes, "Understand something. That paper that you're looking at has a net value of 0, and so do those, quote, assets in there." He goes, "Learn something from your great-grandfather. If you don't hold it,
right,
you don't own it." And it goes back to the counterparty risk issue that you talked about earlier in this conversation.
Well, yeah, for many years, I guess you could go all the way back to 2004, 2005. My partner, Jim, in the past had talked about getting your certificates, getting your stock certificates. If your broker goes down, even in normal times, if they're not merged into another broker, it's going to take you 3 to 5 years to get your shares back. When everything goes down, you probably never get them back. But if you have certificates in hand, that's your proof, that's your receipt that you are an owner in company XYZ. And of course, if you're an owner in company XYZ that, doesn't make anything, well, it's probably going to be a 0. But if it's in something that produces something real, a mining company, an oil company, an energy company, whatever, companies that make things that are necessities, then you are a part owner of something very real and you have wealth.
Bill, educate our listeners on how they can follow you on a daily basis and how they can contact you.
Yeah, as you mentioned earlier, I just started my own website. Pretty simple, billholter.com. And if you want to contact me directly, you can contact me at bholter@hotmail.com.
Bill, I'd like to thank you for everything you have done, are doing, and will do, and your perseverance and dedication to sacrifice. Because one thing that you've been a role model for many of us is you've put the interests of everyone else ahead of your own interests and your own safety and security by educating and empowering people with information they need to know that they will never get through the bought-off lamestream fake media. And I thank you, Bill, for your perseverance, dedication, and sacrifice. And I thank you, folks, for joining us. Until next time, Dave Janis signing off. My dad's favorite quote: dream big and dare to fail. Thanks for your time today.